I want to talk about how people in power, civil servants, local authorities, government, the police force and so on, abuse their power. And I'll give you a couple of examples and I'll let you decide for yourself. At one time you could get a parking ticket and you got it, say, for 4 hours, but you only used about 30 minutes. And then you'd give it to somebody else. Well, the local authorities decided they're losing too much money and they didn't really want people to do that. So now you have to put in your number plate number, and then you have to do all kinds of things before you can have your ticket. So you can end up like a lemon in front of the ticket machine, and you can't remember your number plate, so you start to panic. And of course the machines are more complicated now. This kind of causes stress to people, so every time you go to park you end up getting all stressed up about putting your number plate and so on, just so that you don't do what humans do the best, which is to share things. So what they're doing is they're actually changing us from humans to commodities. They're commoditizing us, and so earning money from us from parking fees, but they don't actually allow the luxury of being human. The same kind of thing happens with all of these speed cameras and so on. You get penalized, not because you made a mistake, because you see, if you're going in a 60-mile-an-hour zone, but you have one sign that says 30 miles an hour, and then of course there's the threat of speed cameras. If there are no more signs, you will eventually start going at 60 miles an hour. This is what humans do. This is normal. And the reason is that in that context, where you're driving, 60 miles an hour is normal. So you will speed up unless you see another sign. So if you keep seeing signs after sign of 30 miles an hour, then you will stay within the speed limit, or if it was actually printed on the road itself. Otherwise, you will keep speeding up. And a friend of mine who used to work with me at BT was coming to work, and he got caught in the same kind of dilemma. There were a lot of roadworks in Ipswich at the time, and he was caught speeding, and he lost his license for about 18 months. He went through the most massive depression you can imagine. At that time, I wasn't actually doing what I'm doing now, so I couldn't help him, but he told me about it, and he was in such a bad way. He stopped working, so he's no longer gainfully employed. Is that what the authorities really want? To depress people so much that they become less productive? I don't know what happened to him, but he was not in a good place. I remember coming home from Slough on the motorway, and there's one particular junction that's not well marked. And every time we come to that junction, we end up getting confused. And this time we got confused, so we stayed on the right lane where we should have really got into the left lane, but we couldn't get into the left lane by the time we realized, because it was jam-packed with cars. I had my family with me. I had my 2 kids and wife with me. So if I had stayed in that lane where I could have been smashed to pieces by other traffic coming from behind me, I was perfectly legal. That was a legal thing to do. Or I could have turned right. That was a legal thing to do. But at that time, I'd read the book called Port Against Yes or No. That means that there are no absolutes. That you shouldn't be dogmatic about a rule, and you shouldn't be dismissive about a rule. You should always be like a playful child, picking things up, putting things down. Unfortunately, this police officer hadn't read that book. So I was actually, a person behind me kindly let me in. So I said, thank God for that. And I'd actually stopped at the checkered zigzag line to protect my family. So this guy behind me let me in, so I said, oh, what a kind soul, only to find out that it was a police officer looking to get some more brownie points. So I got stopped, really not in a very nasty way, very kind of intimidating way. Stop right there, stop. Okay, like if I just murdered somebody. And so I stopped with my family, and he wrote me a ticket so that I can actually have 3 points and pay a fine. Okay, I could have challenged it, and the judge would have thrown a book at it, but like normal people, it was just too much hassle. I might as well pay the penalty and the problem will go away. So can you see how, these policies tend to harm us rather than help us? There's another case which may seem a bit traumatic, but I'd like to still discuss that with you, which is a young man in Smethwick. He's about 22 years old. Now, he's living with his grandma, and whatever you do at home in the confines of your four walls is perfectly legal. You can do whatever you want, but he didn't want to. So whatever you do in the comfort of your own home is really your business. So this young man, instead of smoking up the place, sitting in the toilet, smoking a spliff, decided that he was going to spare his grandma the torture, and he was going to go outside and smoke this spliff. So you would have thought that in your confined area, which belongs to you, it's your abode, it's your house. You do whatever you want in your house. It's like when you go in to visit a drug dealer, you know exactly what you're both up to. You know what you're doing is wrong. But as long as it's between you two, it's not a problem. It's only when you get a third party involved that it becomes a problem. So when I had an agreement with the guy who decided that I need to go to prison because he self-harmed the second time, it was an agreement between two adults. And if he'd kept it like that, if he kept the other end of the bargain, so when something goes wrong, you don't usually stitch up the drug dealer, do you? Because if you do, you'll find yourself at the bottom of the Thames with concrete boots. Anyway, let's get back to this story. So this young man is sitting in his car, minding his business, smoking a spliff, chilling out. And there's a knock on the window. See, he opens the window, and there's this police officer saying, "Hello, what are you doing here?" Okay, "Oh, I wanted to smoke a cigarette away from my home because I didn't want to smoke near my grandma." And he said, "Oh, is that so?" And he sticks his arm into the car. And then he says to the young man, he says to this young man, "I can smell cannabis." And at that moment in time, humans are unpredictable, so are animals, but humans can be very unpredictable under these circumstances. And he didn't know what to do, so he panicked. He panicked like hell. And he started the car, and he started to drive off with the police officer's arm caught in the window. And he drags the police officer for several hundred yards, and then the police officer's crying his eye out, "Stop, stop, stop, I could go under your wheels, you could kill me, stop." And eventually he somehow managed to grab the keys and stop the car. And then of course he had to give a chase. He called the other police officers to help. He could drop these charges if he really wanted to, but it's very difficult once your self-limiting beliefs catch up with you, and you haven't read the book called Porkins, yes or no, for you to actually say, well, hang on a second, I probably provoked what happened to me, and as long as I can learn from this, I will actually drop the charges. Just like that guy who self-harmed the second time, he could have said, "Oh, well, I don't want to destroy this old man's life. I screwed up the second time. The first time I hid it from the police, the second time I'll put my hands up to my wife and I'll say, 'I'm sorry, darling, I screwed up again.'" That's all he had to do. But no, he decided to blame me. And this police officer could have actually walked away. What is it? It's a bloody spliff, isn't it? It's a Class B drug. If you try and stop everybody who's smoking spliffs around the UK, then you would go completely insane. And he could have actually said, "I can smell some cannabis. Okay, I'm just giving you a verbal warning, a nice one, because I'm a community police officer. try not to let it happen again. Anyway, just I'm keeping my eyes on you, so just don't do it again. And this young man would have been frightened out of his wits, and he would have done exactly that. But no, he had to provoke the situation. And it's on the TV cameras, and just like my case was in national press, it was in local media, it was all over the place, it was on the internet, and this is all over the place. It's like a sensation. Wow, just look at this brave police officer, not a stupid, incompetent moron, but look at this brave police officer who will risk his life and limb to catch this guy smoking what? A spliff. Oh my God, can we get real here? What's going on in this bloody upside down world? You see, I was told not to make this video because somebody very close to me said that really I feel for the police officer. Yeah, well, I feel for the police officer as well. Nobody should be dragged by their arm in a car driven by somebody who smoked a spliff. But you have to take responsibility. If you create a situation where people can react that way, then isn't it better not to create those kind of situations? I thought that this is what they actually teach you in police academy, that you shouldn't provoke things. When you're actually trying to negotiate with somebody who's holding people hostage and threatens to kill them, you do it in a very easy, softly way. You don't put your foot down. You don't act heavy-handedly. You don't put your weight on it. Okay, and when I was arrested, and I should have been treated with compassion because I actually saved people's lives, and I saved this guy's life, but I wasn't treated with compassion because one of the things that I was asked at my interview was, why do you have methadone in your premises? And I said, I have methadone just in case somebody coming for methadone addiction doesn't bring their methadone. And the police officer turned around and said, well, everyone's prescription is different. And I said, no, I don't mean I give it to them. I put it in my bioresonance machine. But because he wanted some brownie points, when he actually wrote it down and sent it to the Crown Prosecution Officer, he kindly left that bit out. Okay, so it was a couple of things he did. One was that he left out the fact, he said that I keep it just in case somebody doesn't bring it in with them, so that actually makes me look guilty. And the other one was, I will do whatever it takes to help my clients. Now, that's a saint talking. Okay, but they actually misconstrued that as, somebody who's admitting liability. And really, the way the whole thing was handled, the Leeds police who investigated the first self-harm never documented it. When he self-harmed the second time, they didn't actually pass that on to the Crown Prosecution Service that this guy had self-harmed before. The NHS didn't pass this on to anybody. In fact, they didn't document it either, that he self-harmed before. And the judge, he failed to look at 6 of our videos, and he was coming up with kind of bullshit, such as, how do you know he made 6 videos? Have these videos been authenticated? Well, if you moron, if you were to read what we submitted, and if you were to look at the videos, in there they already consented to that. And in the indictment, they actually admitted that 6 videos were made. And so he was coming up with all kinds of bullshit, you know. He was saying to the Crown Prosecution Service, you morons, why didn't you do a better job? My hands are tied now. I can't send this guy to jail. I wish I could have sent him to jail. So the best I can do is to give him community service. So he was really after my blood. This family was after my blood. He self-harmed. They didn't understand self-harm. They didn't link it with the first fact that he self-harmed before, and they decided that they were going to destroy my life, and they pretty much did. Okay. Still strange that I'm still talking, but can you see that this misuse of power is not really helping us? It's actually tormenting us. It's turning us into mental cripples, because this torture, if it goes unabated, will eventually just make us worse and worse, and eventually we'll end up on antidepressants. So is that what they want? They want everybody do they want every member of the public, do they want every member of society to end up on antidepressants, being looked after the NHS? Or do they want people to look after themselves? So can you see that authorities' misuse of power is not a good thing? And I wish to God, you know, that every police officer in the land is told about self-harm, that self-harm isn't really somebody trying to kill you. Self-harm isn't trying to kill yourself either. Self-harm is a survival mechanism. If you read the book by Sophie Andrews, you'll find that she actually burnt herself in order to stay alive, because it actually helped her to stay alive. Otherwise, she may have actually killed herself. And I knew a guy that had come from Pakistan. He was working as a tailor in the UK, and his wife was so nasty. She was so obnoxious and nasty, and she already had a boyfriend in the UK, and she tormented this guy senseless. And he was kind of stuck in a quandary. He couldn't go back to Pakistan. He couldn't stay here. He was going through so much mental torture, and the only way he could survive was to actually take his needles and stick them in himself. So can you see that self-harm is not trying to kill yourself? And I wish every copper in the land was actually taught that, so therapists like me were actually protected from morons like them. That's it for now. See you next time. Bye.